Well, I think it starts with the fact that capitalism creates crises, because it's not able to ultimately, it can kind of, it can adjust, it's like a sociopath that like adjusts to social norms, but then in the end can't help itself. It's like it knows how to like navigate a cocktail party and like pretend like it is a friendly human being, but ultimately at some point it's going to come out that it's not, and that's what's happening. I mean, capitalism is not a friendly human being; it's a monstrous wrecking machine, and that eventually comes out. That you see it in the way it manages human beings, and creates these absolute crises of whether it's devastating in many entire countries through war, and then stoking very ugly racism in the kind of developed in the areas that have been the recipients of some of that wealth, to like divide the working class in those areas against the global majority who's now knocking at their door because the bombs that they created are now creating all these refugees. So that's a crisis. The environment is a crisis. The climate is a crisis. Ocean acidification is a crisis. These are all crises caused by capitalism, and so that sounds like a kind of a doom and gloom beginning to an answer, but I think it is the answer to the question. Like, capitalism doesn't just go away on its own. It's such a powerful machine. It ends up being the thing that hastens its own demise. And I think if you talk to people, under 30, these days, or even under 40, they're kind of increasingly of the opinion that like, yeah, this system is really not working. And why do they think that? I think they think it because they see that I think they see the climate crisis, but I think they also like feel it individually. Like, they see that their parents bought a house with like a job out of college, and like that is not an option for people who haven't inherited a ton of wealth or somehow struck it rich on with a startup or something. The vast majority of people just don't have those options that were had previously, and so I think that leads them to question the system, and then that opens out onto an openness to understanding the kind of more fundamental crises that are happening on a global scale. And so I think, to the extent that we're able to imagine and implement something other than capitalism, it's going to be because people can see it for what it is clearly. And capitalism is tremendously talented at hiding its own effects from the people who it needs to sustain it. Whether it's like Americans not knowing what their government's doing in the rest of the world for decades on end, and they still don't mostly know. They may still have mostly no idea. Or whether it's Canadians not having any idea how the sort of primitive accumulation of the kind of pillaging of natural resources is happening from indigenous land, and the kind of the social and economic and human crises that capitalism has to create in order to get that wealth, in order to suppress those indigenous populations enough to get that wealth. That's a crisis that was, that there's a whole generation of people who just were in total denial about it for decades. It was happening right there. There were even, occasional stories about it, but it just never landed because for whatever reason that crisis it couldn't quite become visible. But now it is. Now it's visible. Now the climate crisis is visible. And so I think that's where it starts. And then I think, like I said at the beginning, I think we have to actively put effort into. It's like if you want to be in shape, you have to go to the gym, or you have to run, or you have to play a sport. You have to do something that's active to be in good physical shape and to be in good anti-capitalist shape. You need to exercise those muscles as well. We need to exercise our compassion muscle. We need to exercise our cooperation muscles. We need to exercise all these different capacities that we have, but that are left latent by capitalism, in favor of greed, or thinking of the nuclear family as like the only thing that we should care about, or thinking about our investments and caring about those, or or thinking about like kind of like superficial sort of physical pleasures like nice food and nice things, high thread count sheets, whatever, nice vacations. Like capitalism is always asking us to like put our priority there, and we need to not only just, I think we can't just reject that, although we do have to reject it to some extent to create space, but the question is, what are we creating space for? And we need to be really intentional and clear about what we are creating a space for, what kind of intention we want to develop, what kind of way of being in the world we want to develop. And then we have to figure out ways to to actually, practically, push back the actual ways that capitalism exercises power, and it does it through the barrel of a gun. It does it through the news media. It does it through culture. It does it through the structure of our employment and the kind of totally authoritarian workplace. Capitalism has all these ways of flexing its muscles, and we need to understand all those ways of exercising power, and we need to have a response. Not just a response, but we have to be able to beat it at its own game, but we also have to be able to transcend its game and not become what we're trying to fight or what we're trying to replace. And that's a lot harder than maintaining capitalism. It's so much easier to take if you have those skills, those tactical skills, whether it's in media or the military, it's so much easier to take a very high paycheck potentially, defending capitalism than it is to like spend your time in the trenches, like experimenting and figuring out how to both embody those different values and also push back the system in permanent ways.